You're a civil engineer.
Yes.
Did you have a stroke?
Yes.
What's the hardest thing for you now, as far as talking goes?
Talking.
Just talking.
Yes.
My mom used to send me to buy a pack of cigarettes every day for her. I knew at that age, probably from the time that I was 7, that it was something that I didn't want to do, because she reached out for the box of cigarettes before she even opened her eyes in the morning. She always shared that it made her feel relaxed and happier. I never picked up smoking. I had no desire. I had no interest. I despised seeing my mom smoke so much. Pam actually, she was older than I was. She smoked at a very early age. She started in her teens as well. And then, yeah, she never stopped. So, stroke came into my life in 2018. Coincidentally, I was working in stroke. I was out working, which I covered the whole state of Florida. My sister, Pam, my right hand, who was always at home, just didn't feel well one day, and was very unusual because she was always healthy, or so I thought. And one day she had a fever, and the fever didn't resolve. She went to an urgent care. She was given antibiotics, and a few days later she still had the fever, and so she felt really bad. It was about 10 days after, and we begged her to go to the emergency room, and she did. Long story short is we left. 3 hours later we came back, and I found out she had had a massive hemorrhagic stroke, and she was intubated. She was on a ventilator and surrounded by doctors, and it was just a horrible scene, horrible experience. In about 31 days, Pam was gone. And then, strangely, a year later, almost exactly to the date, my mom, as I was coming home from work, and my family reported that she had been acting very strange during the day. I walked into the house, and within an hour or so, she was deteriorating, where her face was drooping. She had left-sided weakness. She was slurring her speech. And true enough, she had had an ischemic stroke, which at 84 is very serious. She was lucky to survive the stroke. I realized that there was a correlation, a very strong correlation between smoking and my sister having the stroke and my mom having the stroke. And turns out my brother also had a stroke in 2009 that was actually not very serious, but still, he had a stroke as well, and he was also a smoker. Smoking always comes back to collect. There's always a bill that's open. And for my brother, the same thing. I mean, I wasn't so close to his stroke, but for sure, there's a common denominator there in the family. And it came back to collect for all three. Smoking and cigarette use, which is what my family used at the time, takes 10, 15, 20 years to develop and to cause its damage. But youth today is smoking. Vaping is our new cigarette.
There's a heating element inside that's wrapped around. It turns into a coil, and you hit the button and it fires up that coil and it vaporizes it.
It's vaping. It's being talked about everywhere. Is it worse than smoking cigarettes.
Is this better than, than cigarettes? To a certain extent, yes, but I can't endorse it as yet.
Your brain grows in some places and prunes in others. And if you introduce a chemical that changes that brain development, you don't get to have that back.
I don't mess with that stuff. It's not healthy. And I could end up sitting the bench just because I want to puff on some cotton candy flavored stick.
There are smaller organizations, foundations that are creating awareness.
Are you like some of the kids we heard earlier? You just know you're addicted. The first thing you have to do is, quote, rip your jewel as soon as you wake up.
If you vape, nicotine cravings could take control of you. Are you possessed by nicotine?
Within the circles of teen to teen and creating awareness of the damage of what this is going to cause and what it's causing.
You don't know what vaping is going to do to you down the road. I mean, you're basically a lab rat to these tobacco companies.
Vaping, unfortunately, it takes a lot less time for the damage to occur. We need to be better informed. And so that's my purpose with all this.
Let me know when you're recording, Dante.
Oh, we got action.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
He's doing an interview. I'd gotten sick. I had a gallbladder problem. I wasn't able to work, and I lost a lot of traction, and so it stressed me out.
I was suffering from a pretty severe eating disorder.
And now it just opened up a new Pandora's box. So, so that's why we're talking.
A lot of girls were online talking about how they would use cigarettes or juuling or, other substances to try and also curb their appetites. Juuling, vaping, it's not as bad as smoking cigarettes. I should be fine with this, I took one hit and suddenly I started needing more and more and more. And
it does kind of give you a sense of like, I'm here now, and it kind of brings you back into the now, which obviously is fake. It's not real.
The anxiety and the, depression and all the terrible things that came with, being heavily addicted to a substance that has an exceedingly high amount of nicotine, it began to take over my life.
There's issues that I have that cause me to trigger me to want to smoke, that I'm gonna need some type of device, if you will, to get off of the devices.
Just going out enough or seeing enough people doing it, I would take a couple of their vapes and I would ask them to hit it a couple times, and I'd be like, oh wow, that's a great flavor. It's genius marketing. When you look at the packaging, when they mask it with the flavors.
Flavors, that's how they do it. Because it's flavored, they think it's safe because they're not lighting the cigarette. Well, the machine heats up the gases and it goes in the mouth. How do you cook a roast? It's with hot air. You put it in the oven, it's got hot air. So you're cooking the inside of your lungs. Vaping or any cigarette, if you're gonna smoke, use a hookah because it goes through water and it cools the temperature of the smoke. That's what hookahs are really used for.
But there's just so many people out here doing it that it's almost like, hey, yo, can I rip your vape? Hey, can I try that flavor? Hey, oh, mine just ran out. You know what I mean?
Did you ever think about the possibility of lung disease or cancer, stroke, any of those?
I know that there's still probably, again, smoking always, comes to collect. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to make sure that, doing as much as I can to repay in advance so that I don't have to later on down the road.
So just tell us about you and what you've been through since you've had the stroke.
On March 2nd, I had an ischemic stroke, and it totally changed my life. I was no longer able to work. I lost usage of my left side, totally changed my entire life.
I was in the bathroom getting dressed, and I was told, I don't remember any of this, but I was told that the nurse came in, asked me how I was doing. I told her I didn't feel right, and then I had the stroke right there in the bathroom.
I'm a smoker. I've been a smoker since I was 15. I'm 54. And I truly believe that smoking had the most to do with my stroke. It's a very strong factor.
And I've smoked for many, many, many years. And if I had a chance to go back, knowing what I know now, I'd have stopped a long time ago.
It's been life-changing, and it is totally a life-altering experience.
They say you're as old as you feel. Well, honey, I am. If that's the case, then I feel like I'm 125. Because that's all I do is sit here. I sit in my wheelchair, sitting here at my desk. I watch TV and I nap all day long. That's it. That's all I can do. I don't feel like a woman anymore. I don't feel like a human anymore. It's bad. It's bad.
I've seen thousands of patients over the last 3 decades with strokes. The good news, however, is that tobacco cessation can modify the course and decrease your future risk of having a stroke. And therefore, it is important not to give up and say, well, I smoked and therefore I am at risk forever. That is not true. If you stop tobacco use, you will decrease your risk of a future stroke. So it's very important to make that point. So e-cigarettes or electronic cigarettes, we don't have enough data in stroke to make a final determination. However, we know that young people that use e-cigarettes have risks for developing lung disease, inflammatory lung disease. In addition, young individuals that vape may also use cigarettes. It may be a gateway to using more cigarettes and even other drugs that can be vaped, such as marijuana. And that is certainly not healthy.
The scientist in me says, is this anecdotal evidence? Is there more genetics involved here that put you at higher risk than the e-cigarette itself being, the target of the study? Everything from peripheral artery disease to plaque cholesterol, even hypercoagulation. There's so many things that can cause a stroke. I also was a smoker for, 8 or 10 years before catching on to e-cigarettes. It's mostly a Juul. This is a collection of about 6 years worth of used Juul pods, because I also understand the risk and need to have ammunition in case there is a lawsuit later on. But this isn't about me. This is about your research and your quest for knowledge and what you're looking for. And I'm not sure I understand what you're looking for.
I'm not necessarily looking at this from the eye of a researcher. I'm just trying to balance the literature that's out there and then come to a conclusion as to, perhaps not even a conclusion, it's an assessment of the landscape right now, what's going on.
Ideally, you would come to a conclusion, even if it's not completely based on evidence. You could still have a good idea and say, I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, no one's saying it's good for you, but you could say the same thing about alcohol. How many flavors are there of vodka on every liquor store shelf? People cried foul when Juul had all these wonderful different flavors. But does anyone cry foul about, all the million different alcohol flavors that kids also get into? Now, it's not okay to say, what about? The whataboutism doesn't help much. But the point is that we pick the focus. And if it's because of anecdotal evidence, a personal experience that leads you to scrutiny and leads you to look for this discovery, then I would say be careful of unconscious bias. Because for some people, it is helpful. And for other people, it is harmful.
This is the one area where we really have the ability to decrease the availability of the product, increase the price or cost of the product, and really raise awareness about the potential risks. It is really such an important factor that needs to be addressed by everybody to try to decrease its impact on health and the consequences that this has on society at large.
Do your kids appreciate what you're doing and the concern that you have for their long-term health? Have they challenged you?
Well, my kids know that I'm you know, I practice and preach a very healthy lifestyle in my house, and they went through all this, you know, the tragedy of losing Pam, and I'm very vocal about this in the house, that this is all related. So, you know, I've even told my son, you know, what are you thinking? I mean, you know, it's like, we lived through this.
Well, I'm sure you very much support, you know, your mom and the work that she's doing.
Yeah, of course.
Have you guys had tough conversations about vaping before? And if so, could you talk about them?
Yeah, well, she found out that I was vaping, and we had a couple of kerfuffles about it. But with my mom, she's never smoked, never in her life. So I quit about 4 months ago, due to the issues that it was starting to give me when I was like doing schoolwork or something like that. If I was bored, I'd smoke. If like I had a lot of issues or anxiety and stuff like that, I would smoke. And just the way that they market it towards, I guess, the youth is just very scummy. It's a very scummy practice that they insist that they're trying to get adults to quit, but it's not really that. They're just trying to restart the next generation of smokers, is what it seems like.
And they got you.
Yeah.
We learned quicker about the vaping because I can remember being in my, I don't know, late 20s, 30s, and they were realizing how bad smoking really was for you. And I think that's what's going to happen with vaping. It just takes time for things to happen, for them to see what's going to happen.
I mean, but this is what we do as a society. How long is it going to take us to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, even though we know how harmful they are? Or coal, or, you know, all these other pieces that are a huge part of society that just make it difficult to cut off the things that are bad for you. There's just a lot of these. I feel like it's in our human nature to be somewhat self-destructive and also at the same time be trying to heal that.
I don't think we can control those things as much as we can control what we put in our bodies. So, you know, it's there, it's out there, but I can control what I put into my body.
So what do? You try and guide people the best you can. Try and give the best information. Try and be honest with your kids about what's going on.
You're you know, again, I'm not judging, I'm simply, you know, looking at this from your perspective and what you've shared, and there's certainly a lot of valid points that you've shared, you know, your perspective. And
it doesn't make it okay to be smoking. And as I said, I'd never push anyone to smoking anything. Actually, it's the anecdotal sound bites, personal experience, the things that are good phrases that sound good on camera. Those scare me more than scientific studies because they tend to carry more weight with the general public. You know, if someone hears a story they can relate to, they latch onto that. Or something is a phrase that sounds funny or seems to fit with their understanding, then that's the one that they believe, as opposed to, oh, it's complicated.
Yeah, I agree.
But definitely good luck with your research.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you. Here she is. This was actually, I think, last year. Yeah, bless her heart. So yeah, there's my mom again. We have her here in the living room with us today. Every day she's with us here in the house. My mom is happy that I'm sharing her story so that this doesn't happen to anybody else, and Pam as well. It's important to relive the past and learn from the hard things in life that have hit us. Very heart-wrenching, difficult things, but yeah. The good news is that we're using this for larger good, right? This is gonna hopefully help save lives, and particularly in youth. And that's the whole purpose of this.